Welcome everybody to the Unit 6 discussion on Constitution. So this is the sixth video discussions on Constitution for the students attending external mode at the University of Papua New Guinea in the course Introduction to Government and Politics. Now in this discussion here we are going to talk about the idea of Constitution. What is Constitution, why is it important, and how does this notion or the Constitution shape political rules and shape the behavior of the state. So basically Constitution is defined as, or constitutions are the fundamental rules that govern any government. Okay, there are two characteristics you can say of Constitution, and one is the establishment or establishing a limited government, and number two is the Constitution outline the framework of the government or government structure. Now let's look at the two characteristics in detail. So if you look at page 45 of your study guide, by way of limited government, so limited government, a constitution is a device, okay, for limiting the power of the government. So in other words, we don't want the government to have more control of our lives or individuals. So a constitution leads the rights of the people or the rights of the citizens, and in doing so it creates limits and duties for the government. So it limits the government not to, and sometimes you can hear and read about this idea of infringement. So the idea is not for the government to infringe on these specific rights of the people. So those rights are governed in or stated in the Constitution. That is why one characteristic of the Constitution is to limit government power on the people. And the second is outlining framework for government structure. So what that means is that a constitution sets out the structure of the government by outlining the formal distribution of authority within a state. So constitution therefore provide a framework for the government by setting up pathways of power, showing procedures for making laws and reaching decisions. So here you have the establishment of various central agencies, government agencies, police, judiciary or executive, the judiciary and the legislature, the three arms of government. So the Constitution outlines the framework in which the government operate. Now, aside from the idea of Constitution, there is this notion of constitutionalism. Now, what is this notion of constitutionalism, and how does it relate to the idea of the Constitution? So we are supposed to, in the study book, read and understand and describe the relationship between the Constitution and what is constitutionalism. So constitutionalism is a belief in limited government where the government is subject to the law. So this idea of constitutionalism captures this statement here, a belief in limited government, as per our discussion on the first characteristics. So constitutionalism is the belief in limited government and where the government is subjected to the law. If the government is not subjected to the law, then the government is violating this belief of limited government or belief of constitutionalism. Now, important here is that this idea of constitutionalism is important to ensure that liberal democracy, the kind of democracy that we practice today, is upheld. Now let's look at this diagram here, found on your page 49 of the study guide. This is how our liberal democracy is being set up and spelled out in the Constitution. So we exercise this notion of representative democracy. In a representative democracy, you have the people who are supposed to be the basis of political power. So in a typical representative democracy, or the constitutional democracy of Papua New Guinea, you have the voters here as represented in the table, who elect the legislature. The legislature then elects the prime minister. So the legislature has the power to choose and dismiss the prime minister or the executive council. So the legislature nominates and votes and approves and chooses the prime minister. The prime minister is formally appointed, okay, ceremonial figure. So in our Westminster system of government, the Governor General is a ceremonial figure where the Governor General stands as a representative of the Queen of England. Okay, we are a part of the Commonwealth country, and this is how it is set up in most of the Commonwealth countries. So you have the Queen, the Governor General. So in sort of fulfilling the process, after the legislature votes for the Prime Minister, the Governor General needs to sign documents to formally legitimize the process of the appointment of the Prime Minister. When the Prime Minister is appointed, he is in charge of choosing the executive council. Okay, so the Prime Minister chooses various ministers, ministerial portfolios, by vice ministers, etc., etc. So the Prime Minister chooses his National Executive Council, or the Council Minister, who then administers departments and ministries, so to speak. So all this process here is spelled out clearly in the Constitution. So when the Prime Minister or when the legislature is not upholding processes in voting for the Prime Minister, like we have in the 2011 political impasse, where the late great Chief Sir Michael Somare was hospitalized in Singapore, the legislature pushed in through its numerical strength and declared the seat of the Prime Minister vacant. In doing so, that political impasse alone is an example of violation of this idea of constitutionalism. So constitutionalism is a belief in limited government, where the government is subject to the law. Where in the political impasse, the government or the legislature was not subjected to the law. So it violates this idea of constitutionalism, or question this idea of constitutionalism. Okay. So here, the idea of constitutionalism is supposed to follow this process here for a government to exist. Now let's talk about the Constitution of Papua New Guinea. Now, the Constitution of Papua New Guinea was established, or the idea came into existence at around 1884, not until 1949, where the Papua and New Guinea territories came together under the Papua New Guinea Act. And then you have 1951, the establishment of the Legislative Council, and up until the 1972 self-government. These are important pointers in history that it shapes the constitution model of Papua New Guinea. So during that time, by the 1960s, 1967, up to the self-government era, Papua New Guinea had established what is called the CPC, or the Constitutional Planning Committee. Now, this is important because our constitution is said to be homegrown, meaning that there was a wider consultation of the people, and the homegrown constitution is that it tries to bring legitimacy to the society itself, and um, also, in addition to that, a constitution that is reflective of the diversity of cultures in Papua New Guinea. So we know that Papua New Guinea has about 100 or 800 different tribes, 1,000 different languages. So our constitution tries to capture and be reflective of the society that we have in. That's why in our constitution we have a section that is left for our customary legal issues or customary law that is being put into the constitution. However, the homegrown constitution of Papua New Guinea thrives on the following principles, or the three principles, or what we call the five directive principles and goals of the Constitution. And the three principles are human development, equality and participation, national sovereignty and self-reliance, natural resource and environment, and the fifth goal is the Papua New Guinea way. Now we will try to go through each of these key principles here in trying to understand the makeup of our constitution. Now let's look at human development. Why is human development important? Basically, this idea of human development operates on the notion that citizens should be free from domination and have the opportunity to develop as a whole person. So basically, it expanded this idea of human development, and the constitution should acknowledge human development, and it should focus on commitment to improve the well-being and quality of life of every citizens in Papua New Guinea. And this also sort of branch out to policy initiatives such as the free education by Peter O'Neill, James Marape, aimed at spreading or ensuring that no man is left behind in our education policy, the free healthcare, medical supplies or healthcare policy, and other social welfare initiatives. So this policy are focused on improving the well-being of and the quality of life of every Papua New Guinean, and in doing so achieve this number one objective of human development. Now let's look at the next, or the second, which is equality and participation. This idea here operates on the notion that all citizens should have an equal opportunity to participate in and benefit from the development of the country. Okay, so this idea focuses on ensuring equal rights and opportunities for all citizens, and promoting active participation in governance. So in Papua New Guinea, we have an issue of lack of women representation. When there is lack of women representation in parliament, okay, that doesn't go well with the second goal or directive principles that is found in our constitution, which is calls for equality and participation. As such, you have measures to address that discrimination, okay, and that measure is being continuously debated on the floor of parliament. Is how best should we open up seats to women? Should we have the 22 reserved seats, or should we have the 4 regional seats? So these are the measures that tries to address this discrimination against women parliamentarians, or discrimination, or promote gender equality and encourage civic engagement through women representation in parliament. So if there's no women representation in parliament, that then questions this idea of equal participation, equality and participation, and also questions this the overall belief of constitutionalism, or the idea of constitutionalism in Papua New Guinea. Now the next is national sovereignty and self-reliance. This notion operates on the idea that Papua New Guinea should be politically and economically independent, with an economy that is basically self-reliant. Okay, the idea that Papua New Guinea is a sovereign nation, it has gained its independence, and it should be self-reliant in terms of its national decision-making and its development. So you may have government trying to pursue policies to promote local industry, protect the national resources. You have Prime Minister Marape talking about equal participation and sharing in the Porgera mining project. That is all to do with this idea of national sovereignty and self-reliance here, protecting national resources and strengthening national identity. And one of that is the push for the NRL team in the National Rugby League, or the NRL in Australia. So that is in a policy initiative that try to capture the idea of national sovereignty and self-reliance. Now, fourthly is the idea of natural resources and environment. Now this is important because it operates on this notion that Papua New Guinea should be politically and economically independent, with an economy that is basically self-reliant. So the protection of, or the idea of natural resources and environment is important in Papua New Guinea. We have diverse culture and also a diverse geographical terrain, full of ecological system, networks, and variety of species. Now the focus of this goal here is at sustainable management and conservation of natural resources. That is why government tend to put in laws and regulation to protect the biodiversity, or prevent environmental degradation, or promote ecotourism, so on and so forth. Now the last directive principle, the fifth goal, is Papua New Guinea Way. Now what does that mean? So this Papua New Guinea Ways operates on this notion that development is to be achieved primarily through the use of Papua New Guinea forms of social, political, and economic organization. Now this brings us this is the idea of Papua New Guinea culture, Papua New Guinea Way. What is Papua New Guinea Way? How do we participate in our country by being authentic as Papua New Guineans? Now its main focus is primarily on embracing and preserving the uniqueness of cultural heritage and traditional values that Papua New Guinea has. And that is why the government tend to support or calls for cultural preservation, promotion of indigenous languages, and recognition of customary laws, and that is why we have customary laws inserted in our constitution. So there you go. This is the discussion on Unit 6, which talks about this idea of constitutionalism, and we've discussed important fundamental principles, or the 5 national goals and directive principles of our constitution. So again, here, for more information about this unit, go to page 44 and consult your resource book to have a deeper understanding on this topic. So again, we'll see you in the next lecture video. Thank you.